One wooden horse ended a war that 10 years of blood could not. For 10 brutal years, Greeks and Trojans had fought without final victory. Troy still stood proud behind walls that refused to fall. The Greeks had strength ships and heroes, but no patent side. The Trojans were battered too, but their gates remained closed. Then Odysseus began searching for a weapon built from thought, not force. In the Greek camp, leaders argued while hope thinned with every season. Agamemnon wanted victory before the army dissolved into despair. Menelaus still wanted Helen returned, whatever the final cost. Odysseus offered a plan so strange that the room first fell silent. He would make the Trojans open their own gates from the inside. Instead of breaking Troy's walls, the Greeks would tempt Troy's pride. Orpheus, the finest builder among them, was ordered to begin at once. Timber disappeared from the shore as the impossible structure slowly rose. Inside the wooden body, space was left for armed men to hide. Only the bravest and quietest warriors would wait inside its darkness. The chosen men understood that silence now mattered more than glory. The horse was designed to look like an offering rather than a trap. One more role remained. Someone had to stay behind and lie convincingly. Sinon accepted, knowing capture was part of the deception. At night, the hidden warriors climbed into the horse's wooden belly. Once inside, they could neither stand freely nor show fear. The hatch closed and Troy's destroyers disappeared into timber and shadow. Then the Greeks burned part of their own camp to complete the illusion. Before sunrise, the fleet appeared to abandon the war entirely. In truth, the ships hid behind nearby Tenedos, waiting for a signal. When daylight came, only the horse remained before the empty shore. From Troy's walls, disbelief slowly turned into dangerous excitement. The gates opened and Trojans stepped onto the battlefield at last. They found ashes, abandoned gear, and what looked like final retreat. But the wooden horse drew every eye and every question. No one could ignore a gift so large that it rivaled a tower. Cassandra warned them immediately, but truth had long become her curse. She cried that destruction hid within it, and nobody believed her. Laocoon distrusted the gift even more than the prophetess did. He spoke the warning that history would remember for centuries. He struck the horse and a hollow sound echoed from within. Inside, the hidden Greeks froze as the spear nearly exposed everything. One frightened movement or sound would have ruined the entire plan. For a moment, doubt spread across the crowd like a sudden chill. Then Sinon appeared exactly when uncertainty needed a false answer. They seized the Greek and demanded to know why he had stayed behind. Sinon played the victim, mixing fear, grief, and careful invention. He claimed the Greeks had chosen him as a sacrifice to escape safely. He said he escaped the altar and hid until the fleet vanished. Then he explained the horse was sacred to Athena and not a weapon. He said it had been built enormous so Troy could never move it. If Troy somehow brought it inside, he warned, the goddess would favor the city. King Priam himself came to judge the strange scene. The weary king wanted peace badly enough to believe what sounded useful. Cassandra begged her father to burn the horse before nightfall. But years of ignored prophecy had made even true warnings sound mad. Then the gods or fate seemed to answer Laocoon's defiance. From the sea came two monstrous serpents winding toward the land. The creatures raced directly toward the priest and his children. Laocoon was destroyed before the eyes of a terrified city. Many believed Athena herself had punished the man who struck her offering. Sinon's story now felt blessed by divine proof no one could challenge. The decision was made: the horse would enter Troy in triumph. Ropes were fastened, songs began, and caution disappeared into celebration. The monument rolled toward the city like a victory already claimed. Everyone wanted to witness the day the Greeks finally seemed defeated. Inside, each hidden Greek felt every violent lurch of the wheels. To admit the horse, Trojans even damaged part of their own defenses. So the city welcomed destruction by tearing open the barrier that protected it. The horse was placed at the heart of Troy, exactly where Odysseus had hoped. Cassandra watched the celebrations with the loneliness of someone cursed to be right. That night, Troy celebrated an ending it had not truly earned. Wine, music, and relief softened every guard and every watchman. Meanwhile, Sinon waited for darkness to complete the second half of the trap. Out on the water, the Greek fleet returned beneath a moonless sky. The army sailed in silence, guided only by stars and vengeance. Within Troy, many guards slept with victory still warm in their thoughts. At midnight, the horse stood motionless while the city surrendered to sleep. Sion climbed the wall and raised the signal the fleet had awaited. The returning ships turned toward Troy like predators answering a call. Within the wooden shell, Odysseus heard the city's fatal quiet. Orpheus released the hatch, and cold night air entered at last. One by one, armed Greeks emerged into the sleeping city. Odysseus, Neoptolemus, and others moved quickly toward the nearest gates. They removed the guards before alarm could spread through the towers. Then the gates were opened from within. Street by street, the invaders spread faster than organized defense could form. By the time alarms rose above the flames, the gates already belonged to Greece. The army entered the city that force alone had never conquered. Thousands of soldiers flooded the streets before most Trojans even woke. Troy awoke not to peace, but to smoke, screams, and collapsing certainty. Menelaus headed for the palace, still driven by Helen and old humiliation. Neoptolemus attacked with the ruthless energy of a younger generation. Odysseus kept moving, turning chaos into control wherever he passed. Even old Priam refused to watch his city die without standing upright. Across the palace, mothers gathered children while the walls glowed red. Cassandra's final warnings disappeared beneath the noise she had predicted. One Trojan, Aeneas, escaped carrying both his father and the future. When Menelaus found Helen, history paused for a single uncertain breath. The woman who began the war survived the night that ended it. Fire leapt from roof to roof until Troy became its own funeral pyre. By dawn, the city that resisted 10 years belonged to its enemies. What the Greeks could not seize by assault, they captured by belief. The survivors faced exile, slavery, or uncertain roads beyond the ashes. The horse remained behind as a monument to cunning and catastrophe. Even Odysseus' success carried the weight of what deception had unleashed. The victors prepared to sail home, though many journeys would become new tragedies. The war ended, but its consequences scattered across every returning ship. The story endured because intelligence had succeeded where brute force failed. It also survived because danger often arrives disguised as an offering. Victory celebration became disaster because relief can silence healthy doubt. Laocoon had heard the truth in the wood, but fear and hope overwhelmed reason. Cassandra's curse revealed another lesson. Truth is useless if nobody believes it. Sinon won because the lie matched exactly what the Trojans wanted to hear. Troy even broke its walls to welcome the instrument of defeat. Outside, the city celebrated. Inside, its destroyers counted each breath. Yet even in ruin, the night left a seed for another civilization. Generations repeated the tale because every age recognizes its warning. Not every threat looks violent when it first asks to enter. Odysseus became famous not only for courage but for unsettling imagination. Priam's kingdom fell the moment judgment gave way to desire. The sea carried away the victors while the fire preserved the lesson. The Trojan horse was not merely a trick, it was patience weaponized. Before humans ruled the earth, power belonged to gods and titans. Among the titans, Prometheus was known not for strength but foresight. His brother Epimetheus possessed kindness but rarely considered tomorrow. Above them ruled Zeus, newly victorious and fiercely protective of authority. Most titans had opposed Zeus, but Prometheus had chosen a different path. His intelligence helped the Olympians win their war against the older gods. Yet Prometheus became fascinated by the quiet earth beneath Olympus. So Prometheus began a new being from river clay. One figure became many until a silent people covered the shore. Athena admired the work and breathed life into the waiting forms. The clay figures opened their eyes and saw the world for the first time. But compared with animals, humanity seemed painfully unprepared. Birds had wings, beasts had fur, and predators carried natural weapons. Epimetheus had already distributed every useful gift among the animals. When humanity's turn arrived, nothing remained except fragile bodies and fear. Prometheus saw them tremble beneath darkness and felt responsible for their survival. He taught them to build shelters from stone, wood, and woven grass. He showed them how sharp stones could become knives and tools. He explained the stars, seasons, numbers, and patterns of time. He taught them to plant seeds instead of wandering endlessly for food. Slowly, human settlements appeared where only wilderness had existed before. Yet one missing power kept every achievement weak and temporary. Prometheus watched lightning create fire and understood what humanity truly needed. To Prometheus, fire was not destruction, it was possibility. With fire, humans cook, warm themselves, and transform materials. But Zeus saw human progress as a threat to divine control. He ordered Prometheus to settle how sacrifices would be divided forever. At Mecon, an ox was prepared for the first sacred division. Prometheus placed nourishing meat beneath the animal's plain stomach lining. He covered useless bones with bright fat, making them appear valuable. Zeus selected the beautiful portion. Certain appearance revealed the better gift. When the fat melted, white bones exposed Prometheus's deliberate deception. Zeus considered the trick an attack upon his judgment and authority. Prometheus refused to apologize for protecting the weaker side. In punishment, Zeus removed fire from humanity and hid it on Olympus. Across the earth, hearths darkened and winter returned with deadly force. Food spoiled, tools broke, and darkness reclaimed every settlement. The youngest and oldest suffered first beneath Zeus's punishment. Prometheus understood that obedience now meant watching his creations disappear. Epimetheus begged his brother not to challenge the king of gods. Prometheus replied that wisdom without courage was merely another form of surrender. He began observing Olympus, learning when guards changed and fires were unattended. The eternal flame burned inside the workshop of Hephaestus. Prometheus chose a hollow fennel stalk capable of hiding a glowing ember. At sunset, he climbed a path normally used only by gods. He moved between columns, fountains, and shadows without making a sound. The Olympians gathered for a feast, leaving the workshops nearly empty. Prometheus entered the forge where heat turned darkness orange. He pressed the stalk into the flame until its hidden core began glowing. Then he sealed the ember inside, concealing light beneath an ordinary plant. Footsteps approached before Prometheus could leave the forge. He remained motionless while Hephaestus inspected the eternal flame. A single spark escaped, nearly revealing the theft beneath his cloak. A distant call drew the smith away before he noticed anything missing. Prometheus crossed Olympus faster, knowing delay now increased every danger. He passed the final gate while thunder gathered above the palace. Inside the hollow stalk, a stolen sunrise traveled toward humanity. The people gathered when Prometheus returned from the mountain. He placed the hidden ember among dry grass and carefully breathed. Flame rose again, brighter, because everyone understood what had been risked. One fire became 10, spreading beyond Zeus's reach. Food softened, became safer, and remained edible for longer journeys. Clay became pottery capable of storing water, grain, and medicine. Farms expanded because fire created blades, plows, and durable equipment. Night no longer ended work, learning music, or shared memory. Within years, human life began changing faster than Zeus expected. From Olympus, Zeus saw countless flames shining like rebellious stars. He immediately understood who had returned the forbidden gift. Zeus commanded Hephaestus to capture the Titan and prepare an eternal punishment. Prometheus did not resist when the gods arrived among the people. Before leaving, he reminded them that knowledge must be protected and shared. Far east, the gods chained Prometheus to a mountain above the clouds. Hephaestus obeyed reluctantly, binding wrists and ankles with divine metal. Zeus also demanded a prophecy concerning a threat to his future rule. Prometheus knew the answer but refused to surrender his final protection. Angered again, Zeus created a punishment that would repeat each day. Each morning, an eagle descended upon the helpless Titan. The torment destroyed his body, but immortality rebuilt it each night. By dawn, healing made him ready to suffer everything again. Years became centuries while seasons moved beneath the mountain. Yet from the cliff, Prometheus could see fire continuing to spread. Villages became cities and tools became machines of increasing complexity. Fire created medicine, glass, stronger homes, and safer journeys. But the gift also revealed humanity's ability to build or destroy. Prometheus had given possibility, not guaranteed wisdom. Zeus returned repeatedly, offering freedom in exchange for the prophecy. Each time, Prometheus refused to trade knowledge for personal relief. Ocean spirits visited him, bringing sympathy but no power to break the chains. A suffering traveler named Io once reached the mountain and heard his story. Prometheus predicted that one of her descendants would eventually free him. Kingdoms rose, disappeared, and became forgotten while the Titan remained. At last, the hero Hercules reached the distant Caucasus Mountains. He saw the eagle descending and understood the punishment immediately. Hercules raised his bow before the creature could begin another attack. One perfect arrow ended the eagle's endless return. Then Hercules climbed the cliff and tested the unbreakable chains. His strength shattered the bindings that ordinary weapons could never damage. For the first time in ages, Prometheus stood without bronze around him. Zeus appeared, unwilling to let the punishment end without condition. Another immortal, Chiron, surrendered his immortality to satisfy divine law. Prometheus also wore a ring containing stone from the mountain. Thus he remained symbolically bound, although his body was finally free. Prometheus revealed the marriage Zeus must avoid to protect his throne. The warning prevented the birth of a child stronger than Zeus. After centuries of suffering, Prometheus returned to the world he had changed. People remembered him whenever they gathered around controlled flame. Every craft carrying knowledge became part of his stolen gift. He valued teaching most because knowledge survives only when passed forward. Fire became more than heat, it became a symbol of thought itself. Curiosity spread because darkness no longer controlled every waking hour. Prometheus's gift demanded responsibility equal to its power. Zeus had feared human power, while Prometheus feared human helplessness. Their conflict became a question every civilization would face again. Was obedience more important than protecting those unable to protect themselves? Prometheus believed power became worthy only when shared with purpose. Generations preserved his story because invention always carries a price. His suffering transformed him from rebel into guardian of human possibility. The smallest hidden ember had changed the destiny of an entire species. Before Hercules became a legend, the gods had already chosen his suffering. Hera hated the child because he carried the blood of Zeus. While he slept, two serpents crawled silently toward his cradle. Even as a baby, Hercules defeated them with impossible strength. As a man, Hercules became famous for courage and overwhelming power. Then Hera clouded his mind and turned his strength against everything he loved. When the madness ended, he discovered a tragedy he could never undo. Desperate for forgiveness, he traveled to Delphi and begged for guidance. The oracle ordered him to serve King Eurystheus and complete impossible labors. The first labor led Hercules toward a lion no weapon could pierce. The Nemean lion had skin harder than bronze and claws like none. His arrows struck perfectly, then fell uselessly onto the stone. He blocked one entrance, forcing the creature toward a single escape. Inside the darkness, Hercules abandoned weapons and trusted his own strength. After a brutal struggle, the lion finally stopped moving. Only the lion's own claw could cut through its legendary skin. Hercules wore the hide, carrying his first victory into every future battle. The second labor waited inside the poisoned swamps of Lerna. The Hydra possessed many heads, and one could never die. Each severed head returned as two, turning victory into multiplication. His companion Iolaus noticed that fire could seal each wounded neck. Hercules cut and Iolaus burned, stopping the heads from returning. Hera sent a giant crab, hoping chaos would break their rhythm. Hercules removed the distraction without abandoning the true danger. He buried the immortal head beneath stone where it could never escape. The third labor demanded a creature sacred to Artemis. He followed the Ceryneian hind for an entire year. Seasons changed, but Hercules refused to injure the sacred animal. Patience became more important than speed or strength. At last he captured without causing serious harm. Artemis appeared, furious that a mortal had touched her creature. Hercules explained the labor and promised the hind would return safely. The goddess accepted his honesty and permitted the journey. The fourth labor sent Hercules after the savage Erymanthian boar. He followed the beast into mountains buried beneath winter snow. Instead of attacking directly, he frightened it toward deeper snow. The heavy animal lost speed as the snow trapped its legs. Hercules used the terrain, then secured the exhausted beast with rope. He carried the enormous boar back as if it were simple luggage. Eurystheus panicked and hid inside a bronze storage jar. For once, the labor ended with fear belonging to the king. The fifth labor seemed less heroic, but far more impossible. King August demanded that decades of filth disappear before sunset. Hercules refused to clean by hand and studied the surrounding land. He opened channels connecting two powerful rivers to the building. Water thundered through the stables and carried the filth away. Before sunset, the impossible task had become a lesson in engineering. Jace broke his promise, proving clever work does not guarantee fair reward. Hercules left knowing some victories reveal character more than strength. The sixth labor led toward a lake ruled by deadly bird. The Stymphalian birds launched metal feathers like flying blades. Even Hercules could not reach enemies that refused to land. Athena gave him bronze clappers forged to create unbearable noise. The violent sound forced every hidden bird into the open sky. Once visible, the flock lost the safety of surprise. The survivors fled the region and never dominated the lake again. The labor proved that the right tool can defeat unreachable danger. The seventh labor sent Hercules to capture the raging Cretan bull. The bull was sacred and uncontrollable after divine punishment. He tracked it through fields marked by shattered stone and broken trees. Hercules faced the charge without spear, sword, or shield. He seized both horns while the creature drove him across the earth. Using balance instead of rage, he forced the bull to kneel. He transported the living animal across the sea to Eurystheus. Released afterward, the bull escaped and created another future legend. The eighth labor concerned the flesh-eating mares of King Diomedes. These horses had been trained to hunger for violence. Hercules broke into the stable and cut the heavy chains. Diomedes attacked before the mares could be moved to safety. Hercules defeated the cruel king who had created their unnatural hunger. Without their master, the horses slowly returned to ordinary behavior. He delivered them alive, proving monsters are sometimes made, not born. The mares eventually lived quietly, far from the cruelty that shaped them. The ninth labor required the war belt of Queen Hippolyta. Hippolyta welcomed Hercules and listened carefully to his request. Impressed by his honesty, she agreed to give him the belt. Hera spread a lie that Hercules intended to abduct their queen. The peaceful meeting shattered as armed Amazons surrounded the shore. Hercules fought through confusion, never understanding who had started it. By the time truth emerged, trust had already been destroyed. He gained the belt, but the labor felt nothing like victory. The 10th labor demanded the red cattle of giant Geryon. The journey crossed a desert where even the sun seemed hostile. Helios admired his courage and lent him a golden vessel. Hercules crossed the ocean inside, shaped for a god. At Erythea, the two-headed dog Orpheus attacked first. He defeated the Guardians before Geryon arrived in full armor. One arrow ended the giant's advantage before the battle could surround him. He gathered the herd and began the longest return of any labor. The 11th labor sought golden apples hidden beyond the known world. He captured the shape-changing Nereus and demanded the garden's location. Near the garden, Hercules found Atlas carrying the weight of the sky. He offered to bear the heavens while Atlas collected the fruit. The sky pressed downward with a weight no mountain could explain. Atlas returned, then announced he would never carry the burden again. Hercules agreed, then Hercules had one moment to adjust his lion skin. When Atlas lifted the sky, Hercules took the apples and departed. The final labor required Hercules to bring Cerberus from the underworld. Hades allowed the attempt only if Hercules used no weapon. Cerberus attacked with 3 jaws and strength born from death. Hercules protected himself with the lion skin and closed both arms. He refused to release the grip until every head stopped fighting. For the first time, the guardian of death entered the living world. Eurystheus hid in terror and ordered the creature returned immediately. Hercules returned Cerberus unharmed, completing the final labor with restraint. After 12 labors, Hercules had survived monsters, kings, gods, and himself. Each labor demanded a different answer, not simply greater strength. Some required force, while others demanded patience, tools, honesty, or cleverness. The tasks could not erase his past, but they changed his future. He began using strength to protect lives rather than prove superiority. He taught others that power without control creates new monsters. Even Hera could no longer deny what suffering had forced him to become. Yet the memory of his tragedy remained beside every victory. Forgiveness did not mean forgetting. It meant choosing what came next. After death, the gods placed Hercules among the stars. The labors endured because every impossible problem demanded a new kind of courage. His greatest enemy was never giant or god. It was the part of himself that strength alone could never defeat. Hercules became legendary. Could one song convince death to release a beloved soul? In ancient Thrace, music seemed woven through the morning air. Orpheus was Thrace's greatest musician, captivating every crowd that listened. His golden lyre transformed simple sounds into something almost magical. Wild animals gathered peacefully whenever Orpheus played among the trees. Even ancient trees leaned closer, drawn toward every glowing note. Angry warriors lowered their weapons when his melody reached them. Then Orpheus met Eurydice, whose presence changed every future song. They exchanged shy smiles beside a river glowing at sunset. Beneath an olive tree, he played gentle music for Eurydice. Soon they married, believing happiness had finally chosen them both. During their wedding, a sacred flame suddenly weakened and died. Days later, a dark waited beneath flowers by riverside. Eurydice wandered through the meadow while Orpheus prepared another song. The hidden snakes struck quickly, changing their world forever afterward. Before help arrived, the poisons stole her strength and breath. Orpheus found her too late, surrounded only by terrible silence. He called her name repeatedly, but no answer ever returned. That evening, Thrace mourned while Orpheus stood apart from everyone. For once, the famous musician could not touch his lyre. His grief became a decision no living person had attempted. If death took Eurydice, Orpheus would demand her safe return. He found a black cave descending toward the dead's kingdom. Every descending step left sunlight, birds' wind, and warmth behind. Below, countless pale shadows waited beside a cold black river. These dead souls had lost memory, touch, and ordinary Charon immediately recognized that Orpheus was still alive and breathing. The boatman blocked passage and ordered the living musician away. Instead of arguing, Orpheus raised his lyre and began playing. The melody softened Charon's hardened expression beside the dark ferry. Charon carried a living man across the Styx that night. The black river moved silently, reflecting neither stars nor sky. Cerberus, the three-headed guardian, waited beyond the opposite river shore. Three snarling mouths surrounded Orpheus as he approached the gate. He played a lullaby, slower than a sleeping heart's rhythm. One by one, Cerberus' three heads lowered into peaceful sleep. Orpheus entered halls where every footstep returned as distant whispers. The Furies appeared, punishing guilty souls without mercy or Orpheus changed the song, filling it with regret, not fear. Even the Furies lowered their weapons and wept quietly together. At last, Orpheus faced Hades and the compassionate queen Persephone. Hades demanded why this living man entered his eternal kingdom. Orpheus offered no threats, he simply began his greatest song. The song recalled his first meeting with Eurydice beside water. It carried their wedding, laughter, and every peaceful morning together. Then his melody revealed the unbearable pain of losing her. Every soul fell silent and no shadow dared look away. Even Hades remembered every dead soul had once been loved. Persephone gently asked Hades to grant the grieving musician mercy. Hades agreed, but announced one unbreakable condition for their return. Eurydice would follow Orpheus upward toward the living world again. He must not look backward before both reached open sunlight. Behind him, Eurydice quietly emerged from the underworld's dark shadows. Orpheus climbed onward, unable to see the wife behind him. He heard faint footsteps, yet never dared to turn around. Eurydice followed silently, because dead souls were forbidden from speaking. Without her voice, certainty slowly surrendered to dangerous thoughts within. The underworld whispered that Hades had deceived the desperate musician. Eurydice stumbled behind him, releasing one frightened breath into darkness. His every instinct urged Orpheus to turn and help her immediately. Instead, he continued trusting Hades' promise above his growing fear. The spiral staircase seemed endless through the cold stone darkness. His weakening torch left only one red spark glowing nearby. Water echoed like footsteps, making every sound impossible to trust. Suddenly, every footstep behind Orpheus vanished into the darkness completely. Fear struck harder than Charon, Cerberus, or the Furies combined. Still facing forward, Orpheus softly whispered Eurydice's name into darkness. No answer came because the dead remained forbidden to speak. He wondered whether the gods had created one cruel illusion. Every whisper tempted him to confirm what love desperately needed. He gripped his lyre and continued upward without looking back. Finally, a thin line of daylight appeared beyond the passage. Fresh wind touched him, carrying scents of grass and rain. Eurydice remained behind, still surrounded by the underworld's deep shadow. Orpheus could not know how far she remained behind him. One careful step carried him fully into the living world. Warm sunlight touched his face, overwhelming every warning he remembered. Believing the trial finished, Orpheus turned to welcome Eurydice home. She still stood inside, reaching desperately toward the sunlight outside. For one heartbeat, their eyes met across the fatal threshold. Eurydice understood first. Hades' condition had already been broken forever. Darkness pulled her backward faster than Orpheus could reach her. Her fingers vanished, then her face, then every remaining light. Orpheus screamed her name as darkness swallowed Eurydice once more. He rushed back into the cave, desperate to repeat everything. Charon refused, keeping the distant ferry beyond Orpheus's reach forever. Cerberus guarded the closed gate, no longer calmed by music. Orpheus played desperately, yet the sealed gates never opened again. Death granted one exception and would never grant another chance. For 7 days he refused food, sleep, and sunlight completely. At last Orpheus returned alone beneath a gray rainy sky. Animals followed silently, while even ancient trees seemed to mourn. He abandoned weddings, feasts, victories, and every royal celebration thereafter. Orpheus wandered Thrace, carrying one unbearable memory wherever he traveled. Every river reminded him where their love had first begun. Each sorrowful melody returned to the moment he looked backward. The hills repeated his sorrow across the entire silent land. He refused new love, remaining forever faithful to Eurydice alone. One night, a wild festival surrounded him within the forest. Revelers demanded joyful music, but Orpheus refused to pretend happiness. His refusal angered people who could not understand his grief. At first, thrown stones fell harmlessly beside his glowing music. Then drums and shouting overwhelmed the lyre's protective melody completely. When music vanished beneath noise, the lonely singer finally fell. His golden lyre floated gently downriver beneath the moonlight alone. The current carried his final music toward unseen distant shores. Death no longer frightened Orpheus as his soul descended peacefully. Beyond the gates, Eurydice waited where no condition divided them. This time, Orpheus reached her without fear, doubt, or hesitation. Together they walked, and he could finally watch her freely. The gods raised his golden lyre among the eternal stars. People found its shape above Greece and remembered their story. Their tragedy endured because love required trust during impossible darkness. Love carried Orpheus into death, but never controlled death's laws. Music softened monsters, judges, and kings, but never erased consequence. Generations repeated their story whenever love, grief, and trust collided. The lyre bridged two worlds, but could not remove choice. Its warning remains: near the end, doubt becomes most dangerous. Orpheus nearly defeated death, then lost everything through human doubt. Every faithful love song still carries Orpheus toward the light. After Troy, Odysseus thought warfare's greatest danger had ended. But his voyage home became deadlier than war itself. His exhausted crew survived storm, hunger, and starless seas. Then they found an island without roads or voices. Goats roamed freely, promising food to the starving sailor. Odysseus noticed smoke, proving something powerful lived somewhere nearby. He chose 12 men while others guarded the ships. They climbed inland carrying weapons, supplies, and precious wine. Soon, enormous footprints appeared beside their tiny human tracks. The tracks led toward a cave swallowing temple-sized darkness. Several men urged retreat, but Odysseus remained dangerously curious. Inside, everything was built for hands larger than theirs. Massive shelves overflowed with cheese, milk, and stored food. The crew begged Odysseus to steal supplies and escape. He refused, expecting the owner to offer proper hospitality. At sunset, heavy footsteps shook dust from the ceiling. Polyphemus entered, one-eyed and stronger than many men combined. Sailors hid while the monster drove his flock inside. He sealed the entrance with an impossibly massive boulder. Firelight exposed the strangers, narrowing his single eye suspiciously. Odysseus invoked sacred hospitality and introduced them as travelers. Polyphemus laughed, fearing neither gods nor mortal customs ever. Then he asked where their ship waited along shore. Odysseus recognized the trap before answering that dangerous question. He claimed their vessel had shattered against island rocks. Polyphemus seized 2 sailors and killed them with ease. Afterward, he slept while survivors struggled against overwhelming panic. Odysseus considered attacking the sleeping giant with his sword. Then he realized death would trap them behind stone. They needed Polyphemus alive, blinded, confused, and opening exits. At dawn, Polyphemus moved the boulder and released sheep. The Greeks rushward, but his arm blocked escape. He touched each sheep before sealing the cave again. Darkness returned, leaving one day to invent survival somehow. Odysseus discovered an enormous olive wood club near the wall. Together, they cut one section and shaped a stake. They sharpened one end until it resembled a spear. Then fire hardened the point against breaking or splintering. They hid the weapon beneath filthy straw and dung. 4 sailors were chosen, though everyone shared equal danger. Next, Odysseus prepared concentrated wine, his strongest hidden weapon. 1 cup normally required 20 cups of water beforehand. At sunset, Polyphemus returned and sealed them inside again. Before more violence, Odysseus offered the Cyclops mysterious wine. The flavor delighted him, and he demanded another bowl. Odysseus served repeatedly, hiding fear behind obedient movements carefully. Soon the giant staggered, and his eyelid became heavy. Before sleeping, Polyphemus demanded the stranger's real personal name. "My name is Nobody," Odysseus said, fooling the Cyclops. Polyphemus promised to eat nobody last as generous hospitality. Moments later, the monster collapsed, snoring loudly like thunder. Odysseus signaled, and chosen sailors uncovered their hidden stake. They heated the point until olive wood glowed within flames. Then they approached the sleeping eye with measured silence. Odysseus aimed carefully while others prepared to strike together. Together they blinded the eye, controlling their stone prison. Polyphemus awoke roaring strongly enough to shake the mountain. Blinded and furious, he swept enormous hands throughout darkness. The Greeks scattered into cracks too narrow for fingers. His cries summoned neighboring cyclops across the moonlit island. From outside, they asked who attacked him during night. Polyphemus screamed nobody was killing him through deceptive trickery. The others assumed illness and left him suffering alone. The false name transformed his warning into meaningless nonsense. But dawn arrived, and Polyphemus still guarded the exit. He opened the cave, then blocked the doorway himself. Again, he felt every sheep's back before release carefully. Odysseus studied the flock and found their final shelter. They quietly tied the animals into groups of 3. Each sailor fastened beneath the middle sheep's thick belly. Odysseus selected Polyphemus's largest and most treasured ram carefully. He clung underneath, trusting strength and the ram's patience. The first sheep approached while every hidden sailor froze. Polyphemus checked their backs, never touching shadows underneath them. One by one, the prisoners passed beneath his hands. Finally, the largest ram stopped beside its injured master. Polyphemus wondered why his favorite ram departed last today. Only thick wool separated Odysseus from his searching hand. Then the ram carried Odysseus into bright open sunlight. They drove the flock toward shore for needed supplies. The waiting crew rejoiced when survivors finally returned safely. They loaded sheep quickly while Polyphemus searched nearby hills. Oars struck water, pulling them beyond his enormous reach. Polyphemus reached shore, following sounds from the escaping ship. He tore up a boulder and aimed toward voices. The stone landed behind, pushing their ship dangerously backward. The crew begged Odysseus remain silent until reaching safety. But pride overcame caution, and Odysseus shouted toward Polyphemus. He declared a warrior, not coward, had blinded him. His sailors pleaded that he reveal nothing more whatsoever. Odysseus ignored them, announcing name, homeland, and father proudly. Polyphemus remembered prophecy naming the man who blinded him. He raised his face and called upon Father Poseidon. He begged Poseidon prevent Odysseus from ever reaching home. If home remained possible, make the journey painfully long. Then Polyphemus hurled one final stone toward his voice. It struck ahead, and waves drove the ship outward. The island vanished, but its curse crossed the water. Odysseus knew intelligence saved them, while pride endangered everyone. Strength alone would have trapped the Greeks behind stone. Direct battle would transform courage into useless, deadly sacrifice. The wine weakened Polyphemus without exposing their secret strategy. The name nobody prevented help when Polyphemus called desperately. The sheep transformed careful searching into an escape route. But boasting transformed perfect victory into divine hostility afterward. Poseidon's anger followed Odysseus through every remaining voyage chapter. More monsters, storms, temptations, and losses blocked homeward passage. In Ithaca, Penelope waited without knowing Poseidon's terrible curse. Telemachus grew older while each year erased hopeful certainty. Odysseus watched stars, believing intelligence could guide him home. But the sea belonged to a god knowing him. Generations repeated this story because danger extended beyond monsters. Odysseus contained both patient strategist and reckless victor within. His greatest gift saved lives, weakness prolonged their suffering. Polyphemus lost sight. Odysseus briefly lost necessary restraint himself. The ram remained, silently witnessing their impossible escape afterward. The cave preserved evidence of strategy built under terror. Waves erased footprints, but they never erased Poseidon's curse. Odysseus defeated strength by thinking differently from his enemy. Yet his true ordeal began when pride revealed identity.
On the island of Crete, beneath a golden sunrise, a new tragedy quietly began. Hidden inside the palace, where freedom felt more distant than the horizon, one was Daedalus, the brilliant inventor who had built wonders for kings. The other was his son, Icarus, and hungry for the world outside. Their prison was not a cell of iron, but a high stone workshop under watch. Icarus stared through a narrow window and watched birds drift freely across the sea. Daedalus understood a cruel truth: King Minos would never let them leave alive. The king had once praised Daedalus when it knew too many secrets. After the labyrinth and its horrors, Daedalus himself proved his own genius. Night after night, father and sat in silence, listening to the sea they could not. Icarus could not bear it much longer, youth captivity into a fire inside the chest. There must be a way out, he insisted, refusing to believe that stone walls had won. Daedalus said nothing at first, but his eyes followed the birds beyond the tower. Birds crossed the sky without permission, without maps, and without fear. Then the answer arrived, not through strength, but through observation. If the sea was guarded and the roads were sealed, then only the sky remained. Icarus watched his father gather feathers and felt hope flicker for the first time. Daedalus sorted the feathers carefully, to the smallest, like pieces of a puzzle. He melted wax over a tiny flame and prepared to shape a miracle. String, wood, and wax came the bones of something impossible. Side by side, father and son worked in secrecy, building hope feather by feather. The king's guards remained careless, never imagining escape could come from above. Slowly, two enormous wings began to take shape across the dusty workshop. To Icarus, they looked less like tools and more like a dream taking form. But Daedalus knew dreams were delicate, and mistakes in the sky would not be forgiven. He built straps to hold the wings firmly to the shoulders and arms. Icarus laughed as he tried one wing, already imagining the world below him. Daedalus warned him not to play, because the sky punishes carelessness more cruelly than earth. Long after midnight, while Crete slept, the wings grew closer to completion. At dawn, two pairs of wings stood ready against the wall like captured pieces of heaven. Icarus stared at them in disbelief, as if freedom itself had entered the room. Daedalus moved carefully, treating each strap and knot like a lifeline. He taught Icarus how to move his arms slowly, steadily, and with balance. Icarus copied every motion, though excitement made patience difficult. Then came the warning that would decide everything. "Do not fly too low," Daedalus said, "or the sea will soak your wings. And do not fly too high, or the sun will melt the wax. Follow me, stay in the middle, and trust the path I choose." Icarus nodded, but inside him, wonder was already louder than caution. At first light, they climbed to the highest edge of the tower. The world stretched below them, cliffs, waves, and a kingdom that believed them trapped. Daedalus tightened every strap on his son's wings with trembling hands. Icarus smiled, fearless in the way only the young can be. Daedalus stepped into the air first, and for one breath the world held still. Then the wings held, and he glided above the sea like a living bird. Icarus leaped after him, heart-pounding, leaving prison behind in a single bound. For a terrifying moment he dropped, then the wings caught the wind. Suddenly, father and son were flying together above the shining sea. Far below, the palace guards looked up in disbelief and shouted in panic. Even King Minos could only stare as his prisoners escaped the impossible way. The sky opened around them, vast, clean, and freedom tasted brighter than sunlight. Icarus laughed in pure joy, overwhelmed by the thrill of flight. Daedalus flew ahead, but kept turning to check on his son. Beneath them, fish flashed in the water like silver sparks. Seabirds wheeled around them, as if puzzled by these strange feathered men. The more Icarus flew, the more confident he became. His father signaled for him to stay close and keep to the middle sky. Icarus nodded again, but the temptation of height had already begun. Above him, the sunlight looked warm, endless, and inviting. It no longer felt like danger. It felt like destiny. He pulled his wings harder and began to rise. Daedalus saw him climbing and called out in sudden fear. But Icarus only smiled and climbed higher, drunk on wonder. Soon clouds drifted between them, and distance turned guidance into echoes. Above the clouds, the world felt unreal, as if he had entered a dream. Then the wax began to shine strangely under the growing heat. One feather slipped loose and spun into the air. Icarus looked back, surprised, but still did not understand. Then another feather fell, and then another. And Far below, Daedalus shouted for him to descend immediately. Panic arrived too late, and Icarus beat his wings harder. The sun answered with silence as warm wax dripped from the feathers. The beautiful wings began to collapse under him. In one awful moment, joy turned into terror. Icarus fell through the sky, surrounded by the feathers of his broken dream. Daedalus plunged after him, reaching through empty air. The sea rushed upward, cold and merciless beneath the falling boy. Feathers spiraled around him like pieces of a promise undone. For an instant, his face held fierce shock and the last fading light of wonder. Then Icarus struck the sea, and the sky went silent. Daedalus circled desperately above the waves, calling his son's name. Only feathers floated back to him, rocking gently on the water. At last he landed on a barren shore, carrying grief heavier than stone. The inventor who had conquered the sky now knelt helpless before the sea. Sunset painted the waves gold, but no beauty could soften the loss. Daedalus gathered the scattered feathers as if he could gather time itself. He honored the place where the sea had taken Icarus from him. In later years, people would remember those waters by the name of Icarus. Daedalus continued onward alone, carrying broken wings and a broken heart. Yet memory stayed alive, the laughter, hope, the impossible first flight. He remembered the lessons, the warnings, and the love behind every word. The sun had not been evil, it had merely remained what it always was. The danger had come from a different force, the hunger to rise beyond wisdom. Icarus wanted more than escape. He wanted greatness, wonder, and the impossible. That is why his fall still haunts the world, because it began with a dream. Daedalus gazed across the horizon and understood that genius cannot protect every heart. Between the sea below and the sun above, survival had always lived in balance. But ordinary choices often preserve extraordinary lives. The broken wings remain proof that brilliance without restraint can become tragedy. Soon the tale spread from shore to shore, told by sailors, traders, and poets. They spoke of the boy who flew higher than any mortal should. Some remembered his courage more than his mistake. Others remembered the warning he ignored and the price he paid. But everyone remembered the image of a feather drifting beneath the sun. Daedalus lived on, but the sky would never feel the same again. Every bright morning carried both triumph and sorrow in equal measure. For every parent, the story carried another pain the moment guidance is no longer enough. For every young dreamer, it carried a challenge to chase wonder without abandoning wisdom. Even now, the sea seems to whisper his name when the wind grows quiet. Some say the sky still remembers the shape of his flight. He flew too close to the sun, but also closer to immortality through story. His journey lasted only moments, yet its lesson survived for centuries. A single feather can lift a dream, or mark where one was lost. Daedalus released one feather to the wind as if letting his son fly once more. It rose briefly above the water, dancing in the fading light. In that quiet hour, grief and beauty shared the same horizon. The myth endures because every human heart knows the temptation to go too far. It also reminds us that wisdom is not weakness, it is the art of returning alive. Icarus fell, yet his name rose higher than kings, prisons, or fear. And so the boy who flew too close to the sea became a warning and a legend forever.
Before Jason became a hero, one prophecy placed an entire kingdom in fear. King Peleus was warned to fear a man wearing only one sandal. To protect the child, Jason was hidden far from the royal court. He was raised by Chiron, who taught healing, courage, and disciplined strength. When he learned the truth, Jason decided to reclaim his stolen inheritance. On the road, he found an old woman unable to cross a raging river. Jason lifted her onto his back and carried her through the current. The river stole one sandal, but the stranger revealed no concern. She was Hera in disguise, testing whether Jason valued kindness over comfort. Because he helped without reward, the goddess promised to watch his journey. Jason entered Iolcus exactly as the prophecy had described. When Peleus saw the missing sandal, old fear returned immediately. Jason demanded the throne that Peleus had taken from his family. Peleus agreed only if Jason completed a quest designed to kill him. He ordered Jason to bring back the legendary golden fleece from Colchis. Instead of refusing, Jason accepted and began gathering the greatest crew alive. A master builder named Argus designed a vessel larger than any local ship. Oak, pine, rope, bronze, and months of labor became the Argo. Athena added a sacred beam that could warn the crew of danger. Hercules joined the voyage, bringing strength unmatched by any ordinary warrior. Orpheus came too, carrying music powerful enough to command frightened hearts. Atalanta arrived with speed, sharp judgment, and perfect aim. Castor and Pollux joined, famous for combat, sailing, and loyalty. Jason reminded them that no single hero could survive the journey alone. The Argo left Iolcus beneath a sky filled with hope and uncertainty. Orpheus used music to keep 50 oars moving as one body. The speaking timber warned Jason whenever hidden reefs waited ahead. Enormous earthborn warriors rose from the cliffs and surrounded the beach. Jason ordered the crew to remain together instead of chasing separate enemies. Atalanta struck weakened supports above the charging giants. The falling stones delayed the attackers without trapping the heroes ashore. The crew escaped because coordination defeated strength they could not match. On another coast, they found blind King Phineus tormented by harpies. 2 Argonauts with winged feet pursued the harpies through the sky. They chased the creatures beyond the horizon and freed the starving king. In return, Phineus revealed the secret of the deadly clashing rock. These mountains collided repeatedly, crushing every vessel between them. He told Jason to release a dove before risking the Argo. Soon, the Argonauts heard stone crashing like thunder across the water. Jason released the dove and watched it fly through the closing passage. The rocks clipped one tail feather, proving the passage could be crossed. Jason waited for the rocks to separate, then ordered every oar forward. The Argo entered while the mountains started closing behind the bow. Orpheus drove the rowers with a rhythm faster than fear. At the final moment, Athena gave the ship one divine push. The rocks struck behind them, taking only a piece of the stern. Beyond the passage, Colchis finally appeared beside a broad eastern river. King Aeetes welcomed the strangers with suspicion rather than hospitality. Jason openly requested the fleece and offered honorable service in return. Aeetes agreed only if Jason completed tasks no ordinary man could survive. First, Jason had to yoke 2 bulls whose breath burned like furnaces. Then he must plow a field and sow it with a dragon's teeth. Aeetes' daughter Medea watched Jason accept the impossible challenge. That night, she met Jason away from her father's guards. Medea offered an ointment that could protect skin from fire and bronze. In return, she demanded his loyalty and protection if they escaped. Jason swore before the gods that he would not abandon her. She also revealed how to defeat the warriors born from dragon teeth. He covered his body and equipment with Medea's protective mixture. The gates opened and the bronze-hoofed bulls rushed toward him. Flames crossed the field, but the magic prevented them from consuming him. He seized one horn and forced the animal's head away. Before it recovered, he fastened the first bull to the yoke. The second attacked through smoke, striking with greater speed. Jason stepped aside and used its momentum to tighten the rope. He drove them across the field as flames rolled over the soil. Then Jason scattered the dragon's teeth into every newly opened furrow. The ground trembled as helmets, spears, and armored bodies pushed upward. Remembering Medea's instructions, Jason threw one stone among them. The newborn army turned upon itself instead of attacking Jason. When the dust cleared, Jason remained standing alone. Aeetes had promised the fleece, but victory only deepened his anger. He secretly planned to destroy the Argo and kill its entire crew. Medea overheard the order and understood there was no safe return. She fled the palace and warned Jason before the attack began. Together, they entered the sacred grove where the golden fleece waited. The fleece shone from an oak tree like captured sunlight. A colossal dragon surrounded the tree, awake and watching every direction. She mixed herbs whose scent could soften even a monster's mind. Medea sang an ancient spell and spread the potion through the air. The dragon fought sleep, but its endless vigilance finally weakened. When its eyes closed, Jason moved beneath the coils. He lifted the golden fleece and the entire grove turned gold. The dragon began waking before they reached the forest edge. At the river, the Argonauts had already prepared for a desperate escape. Jason brought the fleece aboard while Medea left her homeland behind. The Argo raced downstream while Colchis awakened in fury. Aeetes launched his fastest ships and ordered the fugitives captured. Medea guided the crew through channels unknown to foreign sailors. She led them into a hidden channel concealed by tall reeds. The pursuing fleet followed the wider current and lost precious time. By sunrise, the Argo reached open water with Colchis behind them. But the gods did not allow the stolen treasure an easy voyage home. The speaking beam warned that anger and broken trust followed the ship. Jason now carried victory, responsibility, and a promise that could not be ignored. Orpheus steadied the crew when thunder and fear shattered their rhythm. Atalanta secured the damaged sail before the wind could tear it away. Castor and Pollux pulled a sailor back before the sea claimed him. Again, survival depended on many strengths working together. After countless dangers, the mountains of Iolcus finally appeared. Jason stood at the bow holding proof that Peleus had failed. Inside the palace, Peleus learned that the impossible hero had returned alive. The people filled the streets as the fleece shone above the crowd. Peleus saw that sending Jason away had only made the prophecy stronger. Jason demanded that Peleus honor the agreement and return the throne. But Peleus refused, proving that cowardly promises survive only while convenient. The kingdom now had to choose between the ruler and the rightful heir. Jason had returned with heroes, divine favor, and a legend nobody could deny. The fleece became proof that impossible tasks could be divided and conquered. No single person had completed the quest, although one name led it. Jason's greatest achievement was gathering people whose strengths covered his weaknesses. The Argo succeeded because cooperation became stronger than individual glory. A missing sandal began the journey, but character determined where it ended. Hera supported Jason because his first heroic act contained no audience. Medea paid the highest price, leaving family and homeland for her promise. The fleece carried glory but also debts that victory could not erase. Generations remembered the Argonauts as the first great fellowship of heroes. Even the heavens seemed to preserve the ship that crossed forbidden waters. Jason won the Golden Fleece through courage, help, strategy,